Welcome back, students. Today we're going to talk about campaign finance. In other words, money, the role that it plays in running for office. The first question I want you to think about before we dive into specifics is to think about the fact that running for office is really expensive. Think about some of the things that a candidate, really at any level of office, think about some of the things that they would need money for so they could spend it on. Pause the video and take a few minutes to consider that question. So I hope you have a list on hand of some things that candidates would need to spend money on. And the point of thinking about that is to make sure that you're well aware that if you want to run for office, really any political office, but the presidency or any of the other big ones, one of the things that you have to have access to is you have to have access to money. And here's why. Here's a list, short list, of some of the things that candidates need to spend money on if they want to get elected. Candidates need a staff of people to work for them, help them out, run their campaign offices, work for them in places. When you're trying to appeal to voters, it takes a lot of people to get the word out. And those people, many of them, have to get paid. Candidates running for election, particularly at the national level, need campaign offices spread out all over the areas where they hope to get votes. And of course, traveling from one place to the other within the country or within their district or wherever their voters live is of course going to cost money, so travel is another expense. Hosting events, rallies, and things like that is another expense. Running advertisements on the television or paying for things that come up on the internet is probably one of the bigger campaign expenses that candidates have to pay for. And then there are other ways that candidates can get the word out about their campaign, about their election hopes or their plans for holding office. These, of course, can involve things like posters and signs and brochures and buttons and that kind of stuff. And obviously, that kind of thing is going to cost money, too. So really what the candidates are spending money on is their ability to get the word out about why people should vote for them. And it takes more and more and more money each time around, each election, to get somebody elected. Because these things, the workers, the offices, the travel, the events, the advertisements, they cost more and more and more to pay for as time goes on. Candidates draw their money from basically 5 sources. And here they are listed out. One of the sources that's becoming increasingly more important is getting donations from people who are willing to give a small amount of money. And of course, in order to make this add up, you've got to get a lot of people who are willing to do this. This is one category of source for campaign money. Small donors, people who give anywhere from a couple of bucks to a couple of $100. Candidates also get money from large donors. These are the people that command a lot of funds and donate money to politicians in large amounts, several hundred to several $1,000s. Candidates can also use their own money that they've raised through a business or have gotten in any other way. Candidates can also use outside groups to raise money for them, and a really common example of an outside group that raises money for a candidate is a PAC, or a political action committee. Another source of revenue candidates can use to pay for campaign expenses is actually using the federal government. The federal government will pay candidates a limited amount of money that they collect through taxes and can funnel toward that candidate's campaign efforts. So here are your 5 sources for where the money comes from. You've got a couple of follow-up questions on your notes. And the first one is, what is a PAC? Make sure that you know that PAC stands for Political Action Committee. And make sure you also understand that a PAC, or a Political Action Committee, is a group that raises money and funnels it towards a candidate. The second follow-up question, which source of money would be best for candidates who want to raise a lot of funds, and why? I would like for you to formulate your own opinion about that question. Give it some thought based on what you know, and jot down your answer. And pause the video. You can take care of that. We'll start up again in just a second. So you get money involved in anything and can increase the controversy and increase the number of problems that thing has. So to help alleviate some of these problems that money introduces into campaigning and elections and running for office, the United States government has created some laws that govern how money can be raised and how money can be spent by federal level candidates, people running for president, people running for Congress and that kind of thing. The law that was created sort of encompasses all of these measures. It's called the Federal Election Campaign Act. This goes back to the 1970s, and it basically created the rules that candidates have to follow when they're raising money. And it created an organization within the government called the Federal Election Commission. And this is a regulatory commission that enforces this law and all the things that go along with it. So it basically is the organization that enforces rules about how candidates raise their money. And there are a couple specific rules that I want you to remember. Those specific rules are disclosure, contribution limits, and public funding. The disclosure rule basically means that if candidates are drawing money in from donors or other sources, they must disclose, they must report on where that money is coming from. And this is just so that we as the American people can keep track of where these people are getting their money and to make sure that there's no potential for corruption. The second rule, contribution limits. A person or a group can only give a candidate a certain amount of money. There's a cap or a limit on how much money they can give to a candidate. So a candidate can't just go out and ask one person to give them $1 million. Or, more importantly, one individual can't just give a candidate $1 million and expect some political favors in return. There's a limit to how much money a person can give. And then the other thing that the FEC enforces is public funding. This is another feature of the Federal Election Campaign Act. Candidates can receive money from the federal government, but if they get that money, they are also signing on to accept limits on how they spend that money. They only get a limited amount from the government, and they have to respect additional rules. So many candidates, particularly in this day and age, don't worry about public funding because they don't want to deal with the restrictions that it puts in place. So even though the Federal Election Commission has a lot of power, there are some limits to what they can do. These limits basically involve ways that the Federal Election Commission cannot enforce certain things that we deem as inappropriate. So the Federal Election Commission cannot regulate how much money a candidate spends on their campaign. So wherever the money comes from, that money can be spent in an unlimited amount. And the reason why we don't want to limit people's spending of money is because this is viewed by certain people, and currently by the Supreme Court, as a violation of free speech. If you limit a person's ability to spend their money, the logic is you're limiting their ability to express themselves, and you're violating their free speech rights. The other limitation that the FEC faces is that they only can govern, they only can regulate federal level elections. So state and local campaign finance is regulated elsewhere. There are not as many rules. State and local donations have to be reported. In other words, the disclosure element is there. But when you're donating to state and local elections, there's no donation limits. There's no contribution limits the way that there are at the national level. So those are the rules and those are the limits on the FEC. So how do these candidates raise money? Well, the general way that candidates raise money is that they ask people for it. They can ask people for it in lots of different ways. One of the ways that's growing in increasing popularity and effectiveness is to use the internet. Candidates will set up websites, and those websites will oftentimes have buttons on them where a person can click on that and donate money straight out of their checking account into that candidate's funds. So the internet has become an important tool for candidates gathering a lot of these, particularly small donors from people who visit their website, get interested in supporting what this candidate stands for, and want to contribute a small amount or even a large amount of money to what that candidate is doing. Candidates can also work with these outside groups. Remember the PACs that we mentioned just a few moments ago? Candidate can work with a large number of PACs, political action committees. It can be gathering money from lots and lots and lots of different sources, lots and lots and lots of different places, and funneling it toward the candidate. So the candidate has that source of money to spend on as well. So be thinking about this. We're going to discuss these ideas and these terms in class, and we'll also have a chance to talk about some of the controversy that comes into having money involved in political campaigns. So bring your completed notes and any questions that you might have to class, and I will see you then.